The Facts of Life was not just a story about friendship and youth. It was once the sweet dream of an entire generation. But more than 40 years later, that cast has traveled through unforgiving crossroads. Broken marriages, illnesses closing in, and quiet deaths that few ever knew about. Let us look back together, pay tribute, and remember the lives that existed behind the screen. Lisa Whelchel as Blair Warner. Lisa Diane Whelchel was born on May 29, 1963, in Littlefield, Texas, USA. At 16 years old, she portrayed Blair Warner, the wealthy, sharp-tongued student who embodied privilege, image pressure, and deeply conflicted maturity in The Facts of Life in 1979. Blair was both a symbol of youthful glamour and the mold that shaped the rest of Lisa's life. Off-screen, she married Pastor Stephen Cauble in 1988 and lived within a strict Christian family framework for more than 2 decades. Yet that very image of perfection created quiet tension, as the role of a pastor's wife gradually overshadowed her artistic identity. During the marriage, Lisa continued striving to sustain her career through Christian music, releasing the album All Because of You and earning a Grammy nomination, while also writing several parenting books. However, the pressure of being both a moral role model and a public figure widened the emotional distance in her marriage, ultimately leading to divorce in 2012. After the collapse of her marriage, Lisa did not face serious physical illness, but instead fell into a prolonged identity crisis and mental strain. She openly admitted to feelings of emptiness after losing both her family structure and her familiar spiritual role. Participating in Survivor Philippines was not merely a television appearance, but a severe psychological trial. Controversies surrounding her parenting books further intensified public pressure during one of her most emotionally fragile periods. By 2025, Lisa Whelchel is 62 years old. She has remarried psychologist Pete Harris, lives more privately, and focuses on writing, public speaking, and emotional healing. Her estimated net worth of around $3 million reflects a resilient career built after years of sacrifice involving faith, marriage, and prolonged loneliness. Kim Fields as Dorothy Tootie Ramsey. Kim Fields was born on May 12, 1969 in New York City, USA. In 1979, at just 10 years old, she played Dorothy Tootie Ramsey, the youngest member of the group, innocent, lively, and a source of bright energy for the facts of life. Behind that innocence was a childhood thrust directly into the unforgiving machinery of television. Her first marriage ended in divorce, leaving her with a deep sense of failure and disorientation. When she remarried Christopher Morgan, Kim was forced to confront toxic tabloid rumors, repeatedly speaking out to defend her family. During this period, she balanced motherhood with sustaining her career through more mature roles, such as Regine Hunter on Living Single, while also beginning a transition into directing projects for Tyler Perry. After years of turbulence, Kim has repeatedly acknowledged long-term emotional exhaustion rooted in her childhood. Working too early, combined with racial bias and pressure surrounding body image, led her to experience silent depression and crises of self-identity after leaving the series. Periods of unemployment and financial instability further deepened her mental strain. Kim sought self-preservation through education, faith, and a shift toward behind-the-scenes work. By 2025, Kim Fields is 56 years old and continues to work as an actress, director, and producer, prioritizing family and socially meaningful projects. Her estimated net worth of around $6 million represents the culmination of a long journey through failed marriages, emotional burnout, and a quiet battle to avoid being consumed by the very fame she gained as a child. Mindy Cohn as Natalie Green. Mindy Cohn was born on May 20, 1966, in Los Angeles, California, USA. At 13 years old, she played Natalie Green, the intelligent, witty student who constantly used humor to conceal her inner wounds in The Facts of Life in 1979. Natalie was the group's voice of critique, its sensitive heart, and an early mirror of the insecurities Mindy herself carried in real life. She maintained a long-term relationship with her partner and later publicly came out about her sexual orientation. While balancing her personal life and continuing her career, Mindy devoted much of her energy to voicing Velma in Scooby-Doo, a role that helped her maintain both financial stability and a sense of professional validation. Her greatest crisis came in 2012, when Mindy was diagnosed with breast cancer. She underwent multiple surgeries and rounds of radiation therapy, all while continuing to work so she would not be overwhelmed by fear. The illness not only ravaged her physically, but also reawakened eating disorders and anxiety that had formed years earlier when tabloids mocked her weight at a very young age. That prolonged battle forced Mindy to confront the fragility of her body and the loneliness of being ill. By 2025, Mindy Cohn is 59 years old. She has recovered from cancer, continues working in voice acting, and is active in supporting cancer patients while living authentically without the need for spectacle. Her estimated net worth is around $4 million, accumulated from hundreds of voice acting episodes, acting work, and investments. Nancy McKeon as Jo Polniacek. Nancy McKeon was born on April 4, 1966, in Westbury, New York, USA. In 1980, at 13 years old, she joined The Facts of Life as Jo Polniacek, the rebellious, tough tomboy who embodied childhood scars and a fierce longing for freedom. Jo was not just a new character, but the spark that helped save the entire series. Off-screen, Nancy's long-term relationship with Michael J. Fox ended as his fame skyrocketed, leaving her with a lingering sense of being left behind. After years of caution, she married Mark Andrus in 2003 and chose a quieter life in Texas, away from the glare of Hollywood. During this period of marriage, she continued working with more demanding roles, such as Inspector Ginny Eckstead in The Division, while also appearing in numerous psychological television films. Under intense pressure, Nancy struggled with eating disorders and prolonged anxiety, rooted in appearance-related pressures and strict family management from a very young age. Professional disappointments, particularly losing the role of Monica on Friends, pushed her into a mental health crisis, leading her to withdraw from Hollywood for an extended period. Personal tragedy followed when her brother Philip McKeon passed away in 2019, prompting her to almost completely sever ties with public life in order to focus on family and healing. By 2025, Nancy McKeon is 59 years old and lives privately, occasionally taking on selective projects while prioritizing mental health and family over fame. Her estimated net worth is around $6 million, derived from acting, producing, and real estate. Charlotte Rae as Edna Garrett. Charlotte Rae was born on April 22, 1926, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, USA. In 1979, at 53 years old, she became the soul of The Facts of Life in the role of Edna Garrett, the strict yet compassionate housemother, a maternal figure who guided an entire generation of viewers. Edna was not merely a character, but a rare form of soft power for middle-aged women on American television at the time. In her personal life, she married composer John Strauss, and the two lived together for many years in what appeared to be a stable marriage until he publicly came out as bisexual, leading to their divorce in 1976. That rupture triggered depression and secret alcoholism, precisely during the period when Charlotte was fighting to hold on to the role of Edna amid pressure that she was too serious and the looming risk of being written out of the show. Even as her marriage collapsed, Charlotte threw herself into work, continuing to appear on different strokes and then guiding The Facts of Life into becoming a cultural phenomenon. Illness arrived in Charlotte's life as a prolonged series of trials. She had a pacemaker implanted in 1982, underwent open-heart surgery, and was later diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2009. Just when she seemed to have overcome those challenges, in 2017 she was diagnosed with bone cancer, while her health was already weakened by age. In her final years, she battled illness while writing her memoir, The Facts of My Life. Charlotte Rae passed away on August 5, 2018, at her home in Los Angeles at the age of 92. The cause of death was complications from bone cancer following years of heart disease and cancer. She left behind an estimated net worth of around $4 million, accumulated from real estate and royalties. Cloris Leachman as Beverly Ann Stickle. Cloris Leachman was born on April 30, 1926 in Des Moines, Iowa, USA. In 1986, at 60 years old, she took on the role of Beverly Ann Stickle, Edna Garrett's sister, a bold, free-spirited, and sharply sarcastic woman who brought a chaotic yet vibrant energy to the final era of The Facts of Life. Beverly Ann did not replace Edna. She shattered the old order with uncontrollable force. Yet Cloris's real life stood in stark contrast to her on-screen persona. She married George England in a relationship that lasted many years but was marked by infidelity, jealousy, and an open marriage arrangement that became the subject of Hollywood gossip. While her family life fractured, Cloris immersed herself in demanding work, taking on major roles such as Frau Blücher in Young Frankenstein and numerous large television projects, using comedy and eccentricity to mask depression and anxiety. The final years of Cloris's life were marked by a quiet decline. Advanced age, prolonged psychological strain, and an unrelenting work schedule wore down her physical strength. In 2021, she suffered a stroke, with COVID-19 contributing to her condition, bringing to an end a journey of nearly 8 decades in the entertainment industry. Cloris Leachman passed away on January 27, 2021, in Encinitas, California, at the age of 94, and was cremated a few days later. She left behind an estimated net worth of around $10 million, the result of real estate holdings, royalties, and an extraordinary career crowned with an Oscar and 8 Emmy Awards. Mackenzie Astin as Andy Moffat. Mackenzie Astin was born on May 12, 1973, in Los Angeles, California, USA. At just 12 years old, he played Andy Moffat, a smart, sensitive neighbor boy who represented the fragility of adolescence in The Facts of Life in 1985. Andy entered the story quietly, yet the role pulled Mackenzie out of childhood far too early. As he grew older, Mackenzie tried to find a more stable footing than the uncertainty of an acting career. His marriage to Jennifer Bouts brought him the sense of an ordinary life he had long desired, but the past was not easily left behind. The pressure of growing up in the shadow of famous parents, combined with a turbulent youth, pushed the relationship into periods of separation and therapy. Those anxieties did not come from nowhere. Mackenzie's teenage years were torn apart by alcohol and drug addiction, and a pivotal fall occurred in 1994 when he suffered a serious head injury on the set of Iron Will. The accident completely derailed his momentum, forcing him to recover physically while also struggling with doubt from the very industry that had once nurtured him. In the years that followed, Mackenzie lived with prolonged anxiety, afraid of being forgotten, yet equally afraid that returning too soon would destroy what remained of his career. By 2025, Mackenzie Astin is 52 years old and still working as an actor, but he chooses roles slowly and deliberately, prioritizing mental health and family life over fame. His net worth is around $5 million, not the result of explosive stardom, but of someone who learned how to survive addiction, injury, and the overwhelming shadow of family legacy. Felice Schachter as Nancy Olson. Felice Schachter was born on November 17, 1963, in Queens, New York, USA. In 1979, at 16 years old, she appeared in The Facts of Life as Nancy Olson, a serious, mature student who represented the first class at Eastland. The role was brief, but it was enough to thrust Felice into the spotlight before her psychology had time to mature. Early fame did not bring her safe relationships. She became trapped in a controlling relationship at a very young age, while at school she was bullied because of her television notoriety. When the show was restructured and she was written out after the first season, the shock amounted to a complete collapse of teenage self-esteem. Although she later appeared in Zapped as Bernadette, Felice no longer had the confidence to continue pursuing Hollywood. Without suffering from physical illness, Felice instead lived with long-lasting psychological trauma. Being replaced, forgotten, and treated as something disposable stripped her of a sense of self-worth for many years. Her decision to leave acting and attend Brown University was not merely a change in direction, but an act of self-preservation. She later became a single mother following a brief relationship and chose a private life. By 2025, Felice Schachter is 62 years old, living quietly as a teacher and working in behind-the-scenes production, far removed from the entertainment industry that once crushed her youth. Her net worth is around $300,000. Modest, but exchanged for a peaceful life in which Felice no longer has to prove that she deserves to exist. Julie Pekarsky as Sue Ann Weaver. Julie Pekarsky was born on January 2, 1963, in St. Louis, Missouri, USA. In 1979, at 16 years old, she joined the Facts of Life as Sue Ann Weaver, a polite, well-mannered girl with a clearly Christian identity among the Eastland students. Sue Ann appeared gentle and proper, but that very image soon became a double-edged sword for Julie's career. The fall came quickly when she was fired after the first season during a major restructuring. What followed were years of failed auditions, scattered minor roles, and mocking remarks about her Christian girl image that gradually eroded her confidence. A short-lived engagement that ended in separation only deepened her lingering insecurity. When Julie married dentist John Probst, she hoped family life would compensate for unrealized dreams. Yet the gap between youthful ambition and reality left the marriage quietly strained for many years. After so many struggles, prolonged depression set in as professional failure slowly wore Julie down. Being labeled and dismissed so early pushed her to withdraw from Hollywood, seeking balance in church life and family. As a mother of 3, Julie chose a slower rhythm of living, where faith helped her stand steadier than the spotlight that had once hurt her. By 2025, Julie Pekarsky is 62 years old, living privately in the St. Louis area, focused on community and local work. Her net worth is around $500,000, modest compared with her youthful expectations, but a price she accepts in exchange for peace after being cast aside too early. Julie Ann Haddock as Cindy Webster. Julie Ann Haddock was born on April 3, 1965, in Los Angeles, California, USA. In 1979, at 14 years old, she appeared in The Facts of Life as Cindy Webster, a blunt, strong-willed tomboy who stood in sharp contrast to Eastland's traditional female norms. Cindy made a distinct impression, but Julie's journey on the series ended far too soon. Being written out after the first season left her in an in-between state, famous enough to be missed, yet not established enough to continue. She gradually turned toward music, becoming an executive producer, carrying with her a sense of nostalgia for a Hollywood chapter that never fully unfolded. In her personal life, her marriage to Eric Becker began in 1997 as a source of stability, but after more than 2 decades, accumulated differences led to their divorce in 2018. As a price paid, the prolonged psychological pressure of being discarded early followed Julie for many years. Her shift into music became a form of self-healing, stepping away from the camera to work behind the scenes, where success did not require constant visibility. As a mother to her son Brody, Julie learned to accept that not every Hollywood story needs a dazzling ending. By 2025, Julie Ann Haddock is 60 years old, continuing to work in music and production, living quietly and rarely appearing in public. Her net worth is around $1 million, earned not from a defining role, but from a steady, redirected path where Julie chose stability over chasing a spotlight that had closed too soon. Molly Ringwald as Molly Parker. Molly Ringwald was born on February 18, 1968, in Roseville, California, USA. In 1979, at just 11 years old, she played Molly Parker, a lively girl with early feminist thinking who was always eager to assert her own voice in the facts of life. Although the role was short-lived, it became the doorway that pushed Molly into Hollywood's harsh machinery far too early. After leaving Eastland, she moved straight into the blinding spotlight of the Brat Pack label. Films such as 16 Candles and The Breakfast Club turned her into a global teen icon, but at the same time locked her into the image of the cute, rebellious girl. Fame arrived in rapid succession, bringing unhealthy relationships, alcohol abuse, and early confrontations with power within the industry. When the glow of the 1980s began to fade, Molly entered the 1990s with a stalled career, trapped by typecasting and repeatedly rejected for more mature roles. After her first marriage ended in divorce, she found stability with Panio Giannopoulos, together raising 3 children. But peace did not mean silence. Molly openly spoke about the abuses of power and sexual misconduct she had witnessed and endured, becoming one of the early voices supporting the hashtag #MeToo movement among artists who grew up as child stars. By 2025, Molly Ringwald is 57 years old, continuing to act, write books, translate literature, and being recognized with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Her net worth is around $11 million, derived not only from film, but from her persistence in redefining herself after being shaped too early by Hollywood. Jerry Jewell as Jerry Tyler. Jerry Jewell was born on September 13, 1956, in Buffalo, New York, USA. In 1980, at 24 years old, she appeared as Jerry Tyler, Blair's cousin and the first recurring character with a disability in The Facts of Life. Jerry's presence was not merely a role, but a real-life cultural milestone. Born with cerebral palsy, she entered Hollywood under a gaze that was both curious and cautious. On set, she constantly had to prove that she was not a symbolic role. After her contract ended, everything collapsed quickly. Her role was terminated, her manager became entangled in a financial scandal, and Jerry was left with nothing. The years that followed were marked by sleeping pill addiction, financial crisis, and the feeling of being abandoned by the very industry that had once celebrated her. Alongside her professional freefall came personal breakdowns. Her marriage to Richard Pimentel ended quietly, and Jerry gradually came to realize she was a lesbian, a truth that further complicated her relationships in a society that was not yet open. Cerebral palsy never left her body, but the pressure to constantly be inspirational became the heaviest psychological burden. By 2025, Jerry Jewell is 69 years old, continuing to work as a speaker and artist, living openly with her true identity. Her net worth is around $5 million, the result not only of acting, but of a journey spent breaking down barriers. Alex Rocco as Charlie Polniacek. Alex Rocco was born on February 29, 1936, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, USA. In 1981, at the age of 45, he played Charlie Polniacek, Joe's rough, hot-tempered yet deeply wounded father in The Facts of Life. The character carried a raw sense of real life, and it was no accident that Rocco made audiences feel both fear and belief at the same time. Few people knew that before becoming an actor, Rocco had taken a very different path. His past involvement with the Boston criminal underworld led to his arrest in 1961, forcing him to change his name and leave the city to protect his life. When he entered Hollywood, he carried those scars into every role, from Moe Greene in The Godfather to a series of hardened gangster characters. Rocco's personal life was also heavily shaped by that past. 3 consecutive marriages were marked by tension, and prolonged breakups left his relationships with his children distant. The death of his second wife from cancer further deepened his sense of isolation, even as his career briefly flourished when he won an Emmy for the famous Teddy Z. Illness later arrived as a delayed price to be paid. Pancreatic cancer quietly eroded his health in his final years. Sadly, Alex Rocco passed away at his home in Studio City, California on July 18, 2015, at the age of 79. He left quietly, behind a legacy of gritty roles and a net worth of approximately $800,000, largely derived from royalties. John Lawler as Stephen Bradley. John Lawler was born on June 5, 1941, in Troy, New York, USA. In 1979, at 38 years old, he appeared in The Facts of Life as Stephen Bradley, the stern headmaster representing order and discipline at Eastland. The calm authority he projected on screen concealed an inner life full of fractures. Being written out after the first season was a heavy blow, triggering long-term unemployment and a crushing sense of being cast out of the industry. Lawler had previously served in the Vietnam War, leaving behind psychological scars that were difficult to articulate. Alcohol became a dangerous refuge as professional opportunities dwindled. Although he left his mark on Phyllis and various television guest roles, his career never fully recovered to the level he had once hoped for. Behind the spotlight, his family life was also unstable. His marriage collapsed, his relationship with his daughter grew strained, and Lawler gradually withdrew into isolation, avoiding public events and film sets. In his later years, he faced chronic heart disease and respiratory problems, making continued work a distant luxury. Ultimately, John Lawler passed away in Albuquerque, New Mexico on February 13, 2025, at the age of 83. He departed in silence, closing a journey marked by many losses, with an estimated net worth of around $1.5 million from royalties and his later work as a coach. Roger Perry as Charles Parker. Roger Perry was born on May 7, 1933, in Davenport, Iowa, USA. In 1981, at the age of 48, he portrayed Charles Parker, the calm, proper headmaster representing Eastland's clean authority in The Facts of Life. That polished exterior concealed an inner life filled with doubt, shaped long before he ever stepped in front of the camera. Prior to Hollywood, Roger served in the military as an intelligence officer during the Cold War. That experience left him deeply wary of power and behind-the-scenes maneuvering. Ironically, it was precisely this image of being too refined that caused him to be overlooked for grittier leading roles. He was repeatedly cast in authoritative supporting parts with limited room to shine. His private life was equally unsettled. 3 successive marriages followed, including one relationship that drove him into bankruptcy due to his partner's extravagant lifestyle, eroding both his financial stability and his trust. Behind-the-scenes tensions, on-set conflicts, and a persistent sense of being undervalued pushed Roger further into emotional withdrawal. When he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, he faced the illness in silence. Sadly, Roger Perry passed away at his home in Indian Wells, California, on July 12, 2018, at the age of 85. He departed quietly, leaving behind a career defined more by endurance than by brilliance, along with an estimated net worth of around $1.5 million from royalties and real estate. They were once familiar faces of The Facts of Life, youthful, hopeful, and standing in the glow of American television. But more than 40 years later, time has left marks that cannot be erased. Illness, broken relationships, loneliness, and endings few could have foreseen. Which actor's life surprised you the most? If there are other names from The Facts of Life you would like us to explore further, leave a comment, press like, and subscribe so you don't miss the most hard-hitting behind-the-scenes stories from Hollywood. Carry the marks of time, tragedy, choices, and unexpected turns. Some quietly disappeared, some left in pain, and others continue living with wounds that never fully heal. Do you still recognize any of them? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to continue exploring more honest, raw, and deeply emotional behind-the-scenes stories of television legends from another era.